Hello students, welcome to Tirumal Classes. Ee roju manam NCERT history 6th class chapter 5 gurinchi maatladukuntunnam. Very fundamental anamata. Ee chapter 5 deni gurinchi maatladutundi. It is like a kingdom, kings and an early republic gurinchi maatladutundi. Sir, you know kingdoms, the large area that is ruled by a king, can we call it as kingdom? For example, Magadha kingdom, Vajji kingdom. Like there are very large kingdoms in India. And what do you mean by kings? The rulers. Mostly we call them as what? The rulers. A larger area which is ruled by a particular person. This large area can be called as a kingdom. And here we have a ruler. The ruler can be called as a king. Then what do you mean by an early republic? Republic. You know the meaning of republic? India is a republic, India. Republic of America, Republic of Congo. What do you mean by republic? When I use the word republic, the general meaning of republic, head of the state must be elected one. Head of the state must be elected one. For example, Indian president is elected, American president is elected. Whenever any country is having elected head as a president, we generally call it as a republic. In the initial days of Indian history, the kings were not hereditary. The king is selected based on their skill. Their skill is nothing but by conducting some competitions. Whomever is winning the competition, he will be elected as what? The king. So anyway, the ruler or king who is elected, we call it as republic. Initially, the kingdoms, the rulers were selected based on their merit system. Means we are selecting them based on merit system. Yes, we can call it as they were republic leader. The leader we selected by the people because of his merit. We call it as republic leaders. Initially there was republic leaders. I will tell you a best example. And the beginning stage of India we have like nomadic people. Nomadic people. When I say nomadic, they are moving from one place to another place in search of the food. The humans are moving from one place to another place. We call it as nomadic. Basically, initially, the man lives in a group called as band. Band is a small group of people having a situational leader. We call it as a band. Band is approximately 20 to 100 members can be called as one band, and several bands together called as tribe. Several bands together called as tribe. Tribe means 3 bands, 4 bands, 5 bands can be called as one tribal group. Band is nothing but 20 to 100 people living together as a small community. We call it as a band. Several bands called as a tribe. Several tribes can be called as kingdom. Several kingdoms evolved into modern state. What is that? Modern state. Right now we are in modern state, but ancient history, prehistory times, we can see the band and we can see the tribe. When we are living under band level and tribe level, I mean to say here, the leader is based on skill. The leader is based on their what you called as selection process. They have to pass a particular test conducted by community. That is the reason why this is called as early Indian history, early kingdoms where the king or ruler is elected by people because of their skill or their merit. Such a type of early kingdoms in India who selected their leaders or kings based on skill system or based on test method, we call them as republic. So in this particular lecture, we will be talking about మనకున్న కొన్ని కింగ్డమ్స్ ఏంటి, కింగ్స్ ఎవరు, వాళ్ళు ఎలాంటి రిచువల్స్ని పెర్ఫామ్ చేసేవాళ్ళు, వాట్ ఆర్ ద డ్యూటీస్. వీ ఆల్సో గోయింగ్ టు టాక్ అబౌట్ అర్లియర్ కింగ్డమ్స్లో వాట్ ఆర్ ద కింగ్డమ్స్ దట్ ఆర్ రిపబ్లిక్ ఇన్ నేచర్. సో ఫైనలీ వాట్ ఈస్ ద రిపబ్లిక్? Republic is nothing but any state where headman or head of the state must be an elected person. It can be based on the merit or based on the skill. We call that particular area is like republic. Clear everyone? Yes. Look now how some man become rulers. For example, ఇక్కడ మిమ్మల్ని తీసుకోండి. Miraku a normal man, how do you become a ruler? For example, Chandragupta Maurya was a normal man. How did he become a ruler? For example, in the modern days, a common man, Narendra Modi ji is a common man, but he became a prime minister. How did some man become ruler? That is a concept here. Look, here is choosing, or else I am asking you a question. Everybody wanted to become a leader, right? Everybody wanted to become a ruler, right? So why you wanted to become a leader or ruler? How can you become a leader or ruler? Tell me the concept, you will understand this. Look now, choosing leaders or rulers by voting in something that has become common during the last 50 years ago and so. అంటే మనకి ఇండిపెండెన్స్ వచ్చిన దగ్గర నుండి we are choosing the leader by a process called election. అంటే ఇండిపెండెన్స్ వచ్చిన తర్వాత we are selecting the leaders by a process called election. Election concept is common for us after independence. Then what about during British rule? What about during medieval time? What about during ancient time? What about during prehistoric times is very, very important to know, because we know what is happening in India, how we are selecting rulers, leaders after independence. That is by election process. We are electing all the people, representatives, MLA, MP, everybody, including President of India is elected. But during British time, what was the process? During medieval time, what was the process? And ancient time, prehistoric time, how did someone become ruler? Because present is elections, but past, British, before British, medieval ancient, and before prehistoric things, how a man become ruler is very, very important. Look this, how did man become a ruler in the past? How did a common man become a ruler in the past? Past means medieval times, ancient times, prehistoric times as well. Around 3000 years ago, some man now become recognized as Rajas by performing very big sacrifices. Around 3000 years ago, if somebody wanted to become a ruler, he has to perform something called as a very big sacrifices. ఎవరైతే బిగ్ సాక్రిఫైసెస్ చేస్తారో, యజ్ఞాలు చేస్తారో, దే కెన్ బి కన్సిడర్డ్ యాజ్ రాజా. రాజా is nothing but what in normal language? Ruler. So how did ancient time a man become a ruler? By performing a big sacrifices. By performing, because I can perform big sacrifice because I am rich, I am capable. When I am capable, I am rich. Yes, I am dominant over the others, I can become Raja. So in the ancient times, around 3000 years ago, man became or recognized as a Raja by performing very big sacrifices. For example, big yajnas, yagas, killing the lot of animals, giving the feast to the people. Hence you are recognized as Raja. Modern times election process. Around 3000 years ago, you become a Raja because of big sacrifices. 2 points are clear? Yes. Look now, the Ashwamedha Yagam. I think we heard this many of the times. Ashwamedha Yagam is nothing but living one horse by keeping the kingdom janda or king's flag on it and leaving that horse openly roaming here and there. Wherever that horse goes, nobody should stop it. If anybody stop it, that army standing behind this particular horse will fight with them, will defeat them. If that horse is not stopped by other kings, yes, they are accepting the dominance of the king who is performing this Ashwamedha Yagam, and they all become subsidiaries of the king who is performing this Ashwamedha Yagam, and they should submit gifts to the king who is performing this Yagam. And a meaning, even Rama performed this Ashwamedha Yagam అని మన పురాణాల్లో ఉంటుంది. Because Rama was a king, right? Also, obviously also performed Ashwamedha Yagam that was stopped by Lavakusha, and later there was a war between Lakshmana and Lavakusha because they stopped the horse which is lived by Rama in the process of Ashwamedha Yagam. Are you getting it right? Yes. Look now, Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice was one such a ritual. And if you want to become a king around 3000 years, you have to do big sacrifice. Among big sacrifice, one sacrifice is known as Ashwamedha. What is that? Ashwamedha. A horse was let loose to wander freely and it was guarded by Raja's men. ఆ గుర్రం అనేది నార్మల్గా ర్యాండమ్గా తిరుగుతూ ఉంటుంది, దాని వెనకాల రాజుగారు భటులు ఉంటారనమాట, రాజాస్ మెన్. ఇఫ్ హార్స్ వాండర్డ్ ఇన్ టు ఎ కింగ్డమ్ ఆఫ్ అదర్స్ రాజా అండ్ దే స్టాప్డ్ ఇట్, దే హ్యాడ్ టు ఫైట్. ఒకవేళ ఈ గుర్రం వెళ్తూ వెళ్తూ వేరే కింగ్డమ్లోకి వెళ్ళింది అనుకోండి, ఒకవేళ దాన్ని వీళ్ళు ఆపారు అనుకోండి, దే హ్యావ్ టు ఫైట్ విత్ దిస్ ఆర్మీ. ఒకవేళ ఆపలేదు అనుకోండి, ద కింగ్ యాక్సెప్టెడ్ sovereignty or dominance of the king who is performing this Ashwamedha. If they allowed the horse to pass, it meant that they accepted that Raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice was stronger than them. Simple language lo cheppalante, Lord Rama performed Ashwamedha. ఒక గుర్రాన్ని ఆయన అలా వదిలేసినప్పుడు దాని వెనకాల లైక్ లార్డ్ రామా వారి సోల్జర్స్ ఉంటారు. గుర్రం ఎక్కడెక్కడ తిరిగితే ఆ కింగ్డమ్, ఆ ప్లేసెస్ మొత్తం వాళ్ళ సొంతం అవుతాయి. ఎవరైనా గుర్రాన్ని ఆపితే వీ కాల్డ్ రామాని ఆపినట్టే, అండ్ దెర్ విల్ బి ఎ వార్ బిట్వీన్ ద సోల్జర్స్. ఒకవేళ ఆపకుండా అలౌ చేశారనుకోండి, మీరు లార్డ్ రామా డామినెన్స్ని లేకుంటే ఆయన సుప్రీం పవర్ని యాక్సెప్ట్ చేసినట్టు. అలా యాక్సెప్ట్ చేస్తే యూ ఆర్ సేయింగ్ దట్ Rama is stronger than us. That is why we are accepting his horse, Ashwamedha. We are allowing that horse passing from our territory, which means we are accepting the supreme power of Lord Rama. So Ashwamedha is one of the ancient sacrifice performed by rulers, mostly to become a king. They are doing such a type of yajnas or sacrifices. Clear everyone? Yes. Look, the Raja who organized that sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who come brought gift for him. And overall any person who is performing Ashwamedha or big sacrifice, he will be considered as very powerful, hence he is our ruler. Next, the Raja was a central figure in these rituals. For example, there is something called, there was yajnam or any kind of yagam. Here the central figure is like Raja. And all these big sacrifice performed by priest, but who is the central figure? Raja is a central figure. King or ruler is a central figure. He often had special seat and a throne and a tiger skin. అంటే ఇక్కడ యజ్ఞం దగ్గర ఒక స్పెషల్ చైర్ వేసి దానిపైన టైగర్ స్కిన్ వేసి he was sitting on that. So Raja is always having like special position while performing sacrifices. Some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudras, of course we know very well, most of the times during yajnas and yagas, Shudras were not allowed to perform them, not allowed to sit even while performing such a type of sacrifices. Look this, the Shudras by the priest were excluded from many rituals. Simple ritual is conducted by Raja, and Raja has a special seat and special position. Who is doing all the rituals? They are all performed by priests. These priests were not allowing Shudras to perform or to be a part of this rituals. And ancient times lo Shudras were treated as untouchables, or they were called not clean people, hence they were not allowed to perform or to participate such big sacrifices. I think it is understand everyone, right? Yes. Let us talk about varnas. మనం చాలాసార్లు వినే ఉంటాం వర్ణాశ్రమ ధర్మం, వర్ణాశ్రమ సిస్టమ్. ఇండియాలో predominantly we have varna system. What is varna? Look at this. So there were four social categories. Meaning the people who are living in a society were divided into four groups. Firstly, we call them as Brahmins, and then Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. Later we also added the fifth community called as Atishudras or untouchables. These four classes who are present in a society in an hierarchical level, let us say Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, next one Shudras. First three varnas, that is Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, first three varnas were called as Divijas. What do you mean by Divijas? Twice born is called Divijas. Like the people who are having this sacred thread, Janjam, sacred thread. Like Brahmin is wearing the sacred thread, Vaishyas were wearing a sacred thread, Kshatriyas were wearing sacred thread. The people who are wearing the sacred thread, we call them as higher varnas, and they were also known as Dvija. Dvija is nothing but twice born. First normal ga puttinappudu, second epudaithe vallu mean that particular sacred thread, Upanayana sacred thread, what? Upanayana veskuntaro, we call them as second time birth. That is the reason why India is having Chatur Varna system, that is categorizing society into four groups: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, called Chatur Varna system. First three were called as Dvijas because they have a ceremony called Upanayana. Upanayana. Look, the Brahmins were expected to study and teach the Vedas and performing what? Sacrifices, rituals, yajnas, and receiving the gifts from the kings and other people. So the Brahmins are meant for what? Performing rituals, study the Vedas, performing sacrifices. The Kshatriyas were expected to fight battle and protect the people. What is the Kshatriya Dharmam? When I say Kshatriya Dharmam, he need to fight for his people, he need to protect his people, is called Kshatriya Dharmam. That is what we have seen even in the Bahubali movie, right? What is a Kshatriya Dharmam? Always a king need to protect their people at any cost. That is what called Kshatriya Dharmam. Look at now Vaishyas. They were like farmers, they were like herders and traders. Mostly can I say they are doing agriculture, they are doing the trade, is called as Vaishyas. Shudras, they are like serve or other three groups. గట్టిగా మాట్లాడితే బ్రాహ్మిన్, క్షత్రియ, వైశ్య, వీళ్ళు ద్విజాస్ అంటారు. వీళ్ళ ముగ్గురికి సర్వీస్ అందించే వాళ్ళే ఉంటారు ఇక్కడ శూద్రాస్ అని చెప్తుంటారు. అంటే సర్వీస్ ఇచ్చేది ఈ శూద్రాసే, బట్ వీ కాల్ దమ్ యాజ్ అన్టచబుల్స్, వీ కాల్ దమ్ యాజ్ లోవర్ వర్ణ, వీ ట్రీట్ దమ్ యాజ్ socially backwarded, we treat them as many more atrocities. But the reality in Chatur Varna system in India, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras are meant for serving upper three varnas. Upper three varnas. Let us look about Janapadas. Sir, what do you mean by Janapadas? Meeru ancient history chadivetappudu we will come across a small story called Janapadas. Jana is nothing but Prajalu. The people who are living in an area is called Janapada. A place where people who are living, we call them as Janapada. Over a period of time, I mean to say around 6th century BC, there was around 16 Mahajanapadas. 16 Mahajanapadas. For example, I will show you what are the 16 Mahajanapadas at the time of this. At the time of this, I mean to say 6th century BC. Look at this. Let us say Kamboja is one Janapada, Gandhara is one Janapada, Kuru is another, like Koshala, Malla, Vajji, Magadha, Anga, Kasi, Vatsa, Avanti, Matsya, like we see, Asaka. These are like total how many Mahajanapadas? There are 16 Mahajanapadas. You understand, right? When I say these Mahajanapadas, the most biggest one is like Magadha. Magadha is one of the biggest Mahajanapadas out of 16. But what do you mean by Mahajanapadas? Janapada is nothing but it is a place where people living, we call it as Janapada. When size become larger, we become Mahajanapadas. In ancient time, we had total 16 Mahajanapadas. As I shown you just now, the biggest one will be called Magadha. That we will discuss in upcoming classes. This is only for NCERT 6th class. Look now, Janapadas. The Raja who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as being Raja of Janapada. After performing sacrifice of a smaller area where people is living, by performing this sacrifice, you treated yourself as a powerful, then you became Raja of that Janapada. Means ruler of that Janapada, king of that particular Janapada. Sir, how did you become a king of Janapadas? By performing what? Sacrifices. After performing sacrifices, you yourself claiming that you are so powerful than any other in this particular Janapadas. Rather, look at this. The word Janapada literally means the land where the Jana set its foot. Jana is nothing but people. So the people who are living in a particular land will be called as Janapada. Archaeologists have excavated number of settlements in Janapadas such as Purana. There is a Purana Kwali in Delhi, Hastinapur. Just now I have shown you 16 Mahajanapadas. Where do we have all the 16 Mahajanapadas? Mostly you see this. This is called West, Central India and some parts of East India. Mostly the northern part of India. When they did excavations here, they found many more settlement patterns. All these settlement patterns clear gives an idea about human settlements. Look at this. They found that people lived in huts. Anthropologists లేదా ఆర్కియాలజిస్ట్ ఎక్స్కవేషన్ చేసినప్పుడు అక్కడ మనుషులు ఉన్నట్టు కొన్ని గుర్తులు బయటపడ్డాయి. వాళ్ళు హట్స్లో నివసించినట్టు. దే కెప్ట్ క్యాటిల్ యాజ్ వెల్ యాజ్ దేర్ అదర్ యానిమల్స్. దే ఆల్సో గ్రూ వెరైటీ ఆఫ్ క్రాప్స్ లైక్ రైస్, వీట్, బార్లీ, పల్సెస్, షుగర్ కేన్, సీసమ్, మస్టర్డ్. తెలిసిందే కదమ్మా. 16 మహాజనపదాస్లో మనుషులు నివసించారు. వాళ్ళ సెటిల్మెంట్ ప్యాటర్న్స్ ఉన్నాయి. అంటే వాళ్ళు ఉన్న ఇల్లులు ఉన్నాయి, వాళ్ళు పండించిన పంటలు కూడా అక్కడ మనకు దొరికాయి. వెన్ యూ డిడ్ ఎక్స్కవేషన్స్ బై ఆర్కియాలజిస్ట్. ఆర్ యూ గెటింగ్ ఎవ్రీవన్? ఎస్. లుక్ నౌ, దీంట్లో వీఆర్ కాలింగ్ నో మహాజనపదాస్. ఐ షోన్ యూ జస్ట్ నో మహాజనపద. యూ సీ దట్ దెర్ ఇస్ సంథింగ్ కాల్డ్ గాంధార, అవంతి, దెర్ ఈస్ అంగ, మగధ, వైశాలి, కోశల. గెటింగ్ లైట్. Kuru, Panchala, like that. We have total there is 16 Mahajanapadas who are spreaded in this particular territory of India. This is an area having very much fertile lands. Hence, there will be a large people settlements here because here it is Indus, here it is Ganga Delta. Ganga Delta, Indus Dagra, fertile lands ఉంటాయి. వాటర్ అవైలబిలిటీ ఎక్కువ ఉంటుంది కాబట్టి there will be a large settlements in this particular area where the people living in this area very largely we call it as Janapadas. As the size is bigger we call Mahajanapadas. Each Janapada headed by a ruler initially by performing a big sacrifices like Ashwamedha. Alage in this time the societies were categorized into Chaturvarna, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. First 3 were called Dvijas. Shudras were called serving community, serving class to above 3 Varnas. Clear everyone? Look at this. About 2500 years ago, some Janapadas become more important than the others and they were known as Mahajanapadas. And a smaller area became a very big area. We call it as Mahajanapada. Forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings, needed protection. Prati kingdom ki there is a fort. Like మన గోల్కొండ కింగ్డమ్ మీరు చూస్తే గోల్కొండ కోట చుట్టూ ఫోర్ట్ ఉంటుందా లేదా పెద్ద పెద్ద గోడలు కట్టి. ఎందుకంటే they need a protection from outsiders. It is also likely that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were by building really a large, tall, impressive walls around their cities. అంటే వాళ్ళ కోట చుట్టూరు పెద్ద పెద్ద ఫోర్ట్ గోడలు ఇంతకు కడతారు అంటే 2 రీజన్స్. ఒకటి వచ్చేసి టు ప్రొటెక్ట్ దెమ్సెల్ఫ్ ఫ్రమ్ అవుట్ సైడర్స్. సెకండ్ వచ్చేసి దే వాంటెడ్ టు షో కేస్ దట్ వీఆర్ లైక్ బిల్డింగ్ దిస్ మచ్ ఆఫ్ మ్యాసివ్ వాల్స్ విచ్ మీన్స్ వీఆర్ వెరీ రిచ్, వీఆర్ వెరీ స్ట్రాంగర్. ఈ రెండింటినీ షోకేస్ చేయడానికి దెర్ వాజ్ అ ఫోర్ట్స్ built around their what do you call buildings or their kingdoms just to protect the people. Look here, very important. The new Rajas now began maintained armies. మీకు ప్రీవియస్ క్లాస్లో గుర్తుంటే చెప్పా, there was no standing army. There was no standing army at the time of ancient men or prehistoric times. The leader is a situational. There is no standing army అని చెప్పా. But by the time of Mahajanapadas, they maintained what? Standing army. Soldiers were paid regular salaries maintained by the king throughout the year. అంటే మహాజనపద టైంకి వచ్చేసరికి there was a standing army concept. దానికంటే ముందు ఆర్మీ ఉండేది, బట్ సిచ్యువేషనల్. ఇప్పుడు ఒక వార్ ఉంది అంటే ఆర్మీ విల్ కమ్, పీపుల్ విల్ కమ్ విత్ ఆర్మ్స్ అండ్ వెపన్స్, వీ కాల్ దెమ్ యాజ్ ఆర్మీ. ఒకవేళ వార్ లేదంటే ది బికమ్ అగ్రికల్చర్ వర్కర్స్. But when it comes to Mahajanapadas time, the king used to maintain regular standing army by paying salaries every month. During the time, they paid salaries, money and as well as kind. I mean to say cash and kind. Kind is nothing but giving lands, giving some important properties to the soldiers. Why, sir? There was a growth of large kingdoms, hence one wanted to capture another. We need a standing army at the time of Mahajanapadas. There was a regular standing army maintained by the kings, paid regular salaries in the form of cash or kind. Look, as the rulers of Mahajanapadas were building huge forts and maintaining big armies, they needed more resources. Resources is nothing but money only, right? మహాజనపద టైంలో నేను పెద్ద పెద్ద కోటలు కడుతున్నా, పెద్ద పెద్ద ఆర్మీలు మెయింటైన్ చేస్తున్నా అని చెప్తాం. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ Magadha maintain very big army, very big soldiers group. I'll tell you in the upcoming classes. To maintain them, to pay them, what is required? Resources, we call them as money. And they needed officials to collect the taxes. So instead, depending upon occasional gifts brought by the people, as in the case of Raja of Janapadas, they started collecting what? Regular taxes. అంటే అంతకుముందు అప్పుడప్పుడు మీరు తెచ్చిన గిఫ్ట్లు తీసుకునే వాళ్ళు రాజులు, ప్రజలు తెచ్చిన గిఫ్ట్లు తీసుకొని దాన్ని శాలరీ లాగా పంచేవాళ్ళు. అది సరిపోయేది కాదు. అందుకని ఏం చేస్తారంటే రెగ్యులర్గా మీరు మాకు ట్యాక్స్ పే చేయాలి, మీరు ట్యాక్స్ పే చేస్తేనే వీ కెన్ మెయింటైన్ ద గవర్నమెంట్, వీ కెన్ మెయింటైన్ ద సోల్జర్స్. అంటే టుడే వీఆర్ పేయింగ్ ద taxes to government of India regularly. That is why government of India maintaining soldiers, army, many more defense technologies. అదే టైంలో మహాజనపద టైంలో కూడా they have started taking regular taxes from the people to maintain standing army. Look at this. Taxes ఎలా తీసుకున్న వాళ్ళు? Tax on the crops, పండించిన పంటల పైన, tax on the craft person, tax on the herders అంటే animal rearers, animal producers, tax on the goods through what? Trade. Hunters and gatherers also had to provide forest to produce to the Raja. అంటే meaning those who are living in that kingdom, everyone has to pay the tax to the Raja regularly to maintain standing army, to maintain standing army. You can be a peasant, you can be a farmer, you can be a hunter, you can be a gatherer, anyone. You have to pay the regular taxes to them in order to maintain armies. Changes in agriculture during this Mahajanapadas. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron plowshare. In Mahajanapada time lo, we have very good agriculture because most of them are settled at fertile lands like Indus region కావచ్చు, Ganga plains కావచ్చు. They started using plow, that is iron plow. మనకి ఇండస్ వ్యాలీ టైంలో they used wooden plow నాగలి to till the land. But at the time of Mahajanapadas, they did intensive agriculture because they invented iron plow. Iron plow is very good to till the land very effectively. This meant that heavy and clay soils would be turned over better than the wooden plow. Wooden plow కంటే కూడా ఐరన్ ప్లవ్ అనేది సాయిల్ ఇంకా బెటర్గా టిల్ చేయగలదు, సో దట్ మోర్ గ్రెయిన్ కుడ్ బి ప్రొడ్యూస్డ్. అంటే ఐరన్ ప్లవ్ యూజ్ చేయడం వల్ల మనం బాగా సేద్యం చేయొచ్చు. We can produce very good amount of agricultural produce. Clear everyone? Second agricultural change ఏంటి? రెండు agricultural change. ఒకటేమో using iron plow. Second, people began transplanting the paddy. ఒకప్పుడు జనరల్గా ఇలా చల్లేవాళ్ళు అనమాట ప్యాడీని. ప్యాడీ అంటే వరి అండి. ఈ మహాజనపద టైంలో ఏం చేశారంటే ముందు వరి నారు పోసి వాటిని పీకి తర్వాత వాటిని పొలాలలో నాటేవాళ్ళు. ఇట్స్ కాల్డ్ ట్రాన్స్ప్లాంటేషన్. అది గెటింగ్ ఇట్. ఈరోజు కూడా మన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో తెలంగాణలో మీరు చూస్తే వరి నాటేటప్పుడు ముందు నారు పోస్తాం. ఆ నారు తీసి తర్వాత మన పొలంలో వాటిని ప్లాంట్ చేయడం జరుగుతుంది. వీ కాల్ ఇట్ యాజ్ transplant. These are the two techniques, two changes that were brought during the time of Mahajanapadas, which increased the agricultural productivity. One is iron plow usage, next one transplantation of paddy. This meant that instead of scattering seeds on the grounds, seeds ala chalatam kante kuda, from which plants were sprout, మొలకలు ఎత్తుతాయి, and like saplings were grown and then planted in the field. This is let increase the production as many more plants survived. So ఇలా మనం ప్రాపర్గా వాటిని చల్లి పెంచి సాప్లింగ్ చేసి తర్వాత నాటడం అనేది వెరీ ప్రొడక్టివ్ దెన్ నార్మల్గా చల్లటం కంటే కూడా. దిస్ ఈజ్ వాట్ ద టూ అగ్రికల్చరల్ టెక్నిక్స్ that we have brought at the time of 16 Mahajanapadas to increase their agricultural production. Let us talk about two important kingdoms at the time of 16 Mahajanapadas. One is called Magadha. Look, Magadha became the most important Mahajanapada in about 200 years. Many rivers such as Ganga, Son flowed through Magadha. I told Magadha was there on a fertile lands. That is why more people living in Magadha. Magadha revenue is very big because they are on the Ganga plains. Soils are very fertile, they can produce more. Hence, the Magadha kingdom will be the rich because of their fertile lands. This was important for transport, water supply and making the land fertile. Parts of Magadha were, let us say, forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for armies. The forest also provided wood for building houses, carts, chariots and radalu. Besides, there were iron ore mines in the region that could tap it to make strong tools and weapons. Magadha kingdom ఎక్కడైతే ఉందో అక్కడ ఫారెస్ట్ బాగుంది, ఫెర్టైల్ ల్యాండ్స్ ఉన్నాయి, ఐరన్ ఓర్ మైన్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి. ఎందుకంటే అదంతా గంగా డెల్టా, వెరీ రిచ్. సో దానివల్ల అగ్రికల్చర్ బాగుండే, ఫారెస్ట్ బాగుంది, దానివల్ల ఫారెస్ట్లో దొరికి ఎలిఫెంట్స్ని తీసుకొచ్చి ట్రైన్ చేసాం టు కీప్ దెమ్ ఇన్ ఆర్మీ. And they also have iron ore, iron mines so that they can extract iron to make stronger weapons and tools. Tools can be used for agriculture like iron plow, and weapons can be like a sword, shield and all kind for better army techniques and defense mechanism. Magadha had two very important rulers. One is called Bimbisara, next one Ajatasatru. Upcoming lectures లో వస్తారండి. బింబిసార, అజాతశత్రు. అంటే మగధాలో ఉన్న రూలర్స్లో ద మోస్ట్ పవర్ఫుల్ రూలర్స్ బింబిసార, అజాతశత్రు, who used all possible means to conquer the Janapadas. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler. అంటే ఈ మహాజనపదాస్లో మోస్ట్ పవర్ఫుల్ వచ్చేసి మగధ. మగధాలో మళ్ళీ మోస్ట్ పవర్ఫుల్ ఎవరెక్కడ? బింబిసార, అజాతశత్రు. Another important king of this particular time was Mahapadmanabha. These are some important rulers at the time of Mahajanapadas. In upcoming chapters, we will talk about each and every ruler. This is just like 6th class NCERT. Look, he extended control up to the northwest part of subcontinent. That is like Rajgiriha, present days Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magadha for several years. So what is the capital for Magadha for several years? Rajgir, Rajgriha. We will discuss them in ancient history, don't worry. Later, the capital was shifted to Pataliputra, present day Patna. And మగధ ఫస్ట్ క్యాపిటల్ ఏంటమ్మా? రాజ్గిర్, బీహార్లో. సెకండ్ క్యాపిటల్ ఏంటి? పాటలిపుత్ర. అంటే కొంతమంది కింగ్స్ వాళ్ళ క్యాపిటల్ని కూడా మారుస్తూ ఉన్నారు. ఎందుకు మార్చారు, మార్చాల్సిన అవసరం ఏంటి అనే కాన్సెప్ట్ మనం అప్కమింగ్ క్లాసెస్లో డీటెయిల్గా మాట్లాడుకుంటాం. బికాస్ ఇట్ ఈస్ 6th క్లాస్ కాబట్టి వీఆర్ జస్ట్ ఇంట్రడ్యూసింగ్ ద పర్సన్స్, దట్స్ ఇట్. సో Magadha, what are the two capital? One is Rajgir, next one Pataliputra. More than 2300 years ago, the ruler named Alexander, I think you know, he wanted to conquer the world, Alexander. He also wanted to conquer the India, but he reached to nearby Ravi or Beos river, but he was not entered into India. So Alexander was the one who captured Egypt, who captured some places of West Asia, but he was not allowed to enter into India, because India we have 16 Mahajanapadas, very powerful rulers with a very strong cavalry, elephant forces, chariots, soldiers. That is why Alexander tried to enter, but we prevented. Very interesting story. We will discuss that in upcoming lectures about Alexander and who stopped Alexander entry into India. That is very interesting. Another kingdom of 16 Mahajanapada is like Vajji. I shown you already. You can say this is what called Magadha. This is entire Ganga plains, Son plains, good forest, good agriculture, and there is iron ore. Magadha is a powerful. There is another place called Vajji. What is that? Vajji. Look this. While Magadha became powerful kingdom, Vajji with its capital at Vaishali. So Magadha is one of the 16 Mahajanapadas. Vajji is one of the 16 Mahajanapadas. While Magadha is doing, or Magadha became powerful kingdom, Vajji with the capital of Vaishali was under different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. Gana or Sangha, which means it's a very small thing. In Gana or Sangha, there were not one but many rulers. Sometimes even when thousands of men ruled together, each one was known as Raja. ఇప్పుడు మనం గాంధార అన్నాం, Magadha అన్నాం, there was one supreme ruler. But when I say Gana, Gana is a small place ruled by one or more rulers. Ruled by one or more rulers. That is what called Gana. Next, they also met in assemblies and decide what had to be done and how through discuss and debate. అంటే ఈ వజ్జి అనే మహాజనపదాస్లో జనరల్గా ఘనాస్ అంటారు వాటిని. అక్కడ చాలా రూలర్స్ ఉండేవాళ్ళు. ఏ డెసిషన్ తీసుకోవాలన్నా దే విల్ జస్ట్ కమ్ సిట్ యాజ్ ఇన్ ద ఫార్మ్ ఆఫ్ అసెంబ్లీ అండ్ దే విల్ మేక్ ద డెసిషన్స్. Like today we have an assembly, right? The same way they have assemblies to take any decision collectively. For example, if they were attacked by enemy, they met to discuss what should be done and to meet their threat. However, women and dasas and there is another group called as kamkaras could not participate in this assembly. అంటే వజ్జీలో అసెంబ్లీస్ జరిగేవి. ఈ అసెంబ్లీస్కి women and dasas. Dasas again say Shudras, the lower communities. In varna system lo bottom most, can we call them as dasas? They were not allowed to participate in assembly. Ante Vajji assemblies lo there is a discrimination on women and dasas. This is just introducing what is a kingdom or a king and early democratic or early republic in India. Clear everyone? Yes, Magadha is very important. We'll talk in the upcoming lectures. All Mahajanapadas we will be discussing here. 6th class లో మీరు నేర్చుకోవాల్సిన బీయింగ్ ఎ బిగినర్ ఏంటి అసలు ఇవన్నీ ఎక్కడెక్కడ ఉన్నాయి ఎలా ఉన్నాయి జస్ట్ ఫండమెంటల్ బేసిక్స్. మూవీ అప్పుడు టైటిల్ లేదా ఇంట్రడక్షన్ నేమ్స్ ఎలా ఉంటాయి చూడండి, ఇవన్నీ 6th క్లాస్ మొత్తం అలాగే ఉంటుంది. వెన్ యు ఆర్ గోయింగ్ యూ విల్ అండర్స్టాండ్ every dot very carefully. Thank you.